The astonishing details unearthed during Erin's hypnosis session are actually quite prevalent in many abduction cases.
Erin's report has a lot of the typical motifs of an alien abduction. Being frozen on the surgery table, being unable to move, being stuck there. This is something that is very disturbing in the way that these stories are recounted.
But many abductees are reluctant to tell their story.
A lot of them don't talk about it because they're scared that they're going to be judged. It has a stigma of them being crazy, not rational.
Terrell Copeland had a difficult experience after he shared his story with the media.
After the newspaper article came out, it was a lot of ridicule. I lost a lot of acquaintances, and I often had spirited arguments with my mom about it.
Across the Atlantic, Helen Moon, a UK resident and young mother, was also reluctant to tell anyone about her UFO encounter and abduction experience.
I kept quiet for 40 years for fear of ridicule.
It all began back in 1980, when Helen, her parents, and her 3 children went on their annual road trip to Scotland.
Everybody was in good spirits, and looking forward to time away.
But their idyllic journey would soon turn to terror.
This is burned, seared into my memory.
What they say they witnessed would impact them for the rest of their lives.
It was a black craft. It was triangular, and it just slowly rose through the trees. It was totally, totally silent. I knew that what I was looking at couldn't possibly be there. It cannot exist, and yet it's there. And I was very frightened, and the children began to get nervous.
She got a very strong impulse. This UFO is very close. It's right overhead. This is something that is coming for them.
Awestruck, in a moment of fear, Helen reaches for her camera to snap proof of the incredible sighting, only to be overcome by an otherworldly directive.
And the camera was just behind me on the window ledge. And as I reached back, I got this terrible fear that I mustn't do this. It was just a very, very strong feeling. It was very intense. I think it was reading my mind.
This comes up in research. There are cases of individuals who will just know instinctively, as they did, don't touch that camera because there'll be ramifications if you do.
Helen and her family are unable to do anything but watch helplessly as the strange craft flies away and eventually disappears. Like it never happened.
The next conscious thought, we were suddenly at Edinburgh. And we arrived there actually on the stroke of midnight. We should have been there about 6:30 in the evening. And we were all, what happened? Where have we lost the time? Nobody had any memory, and we were just so confused.
This realization raises Helen's encounter to a whole new, bizarre level, with frightening and gut-wrenching implications.
I think that we were taken somewhere. I've no proof of that. I just know that it happens. Something abducts you and your children. That's an invasion of the very worst sort.
For the people who claim it happened to them, meeting an unworldly being face to face is a deeply emotional experience that tears a hole in the mundane fabric of our day-to-day lives.
An alien abduction encounter is a very traumatic experience, one that is deeply disturbing, deeply unsettling.
Life-altering. Those are the only 2 words I can use. These are life-altering experiences, and the witnesses never forget.
But their recollections sound more like science fiction than science fact. A loss of will, control over their bodies.
I couldn't move. I was in complete paralysis.
Unwitting guinea pigs to bizarre medical experiments.
They inserted this biological mass into the roof of my mouth.
I felt like I was a lab rat.
Time unaccounted for. No memory of what happened.
We just didn't know why we were suddenly at Edinburgh and where 6 hours had gone.
Are these things really science fiction? I don't think so.
Evidence of that is the credibility of the abductees themselves and striking similarity in their experiences.
I think there's a huge misunderstanding that people who see UFOs or have had these encounters are a bunch of crazed lunatics. I think it points to our really limited material world.
Science doesn't have the instruments to measure the types of things that we're talking about, but I think that there's value in the, what I would say, empirical data of anecdotes. The common threads are really what us ufologists, if you will, rely on to try to put some semblance of a story together.
One of these commonalities can be found in the physical descriptions of the abductors. Terrell Copeland will never forget his.
This is an alien. I just knew it from when I saw the typical alien gray that most of us hear about, the black eyes and stuff.
These grays, as they are called, are the most common species that abductees say they have encountered.
They are described, the large bulbous heads, the large eyes, a slit for a mouth, slit for a nose. There have been multiple species identified and described, but the grays are probably the most enigmatic and auspicious of them all.
But as a child, Erin claims she was confronted by a being far more monstrous.
I cannot recall exactly what he looked like. I do know that his head was triangular in shape and was extremely tall, like maybe 7 feet tall. He scared me so bad.
The descriptions of mutant space creatures don't stop there.
At least 25 to 30 species have been identified. The mantis or mantid grasshopper-like beings, to feline species, to dog species, the dolphin species, many animal, interestingly.
Stories of contact with these possibly malevolent interplanetary beings have been around since the beginning of time. And there is compelling historical evidence that could prove it is more than just myth. A depiction of a possible alien visitor from ancient Egypt in a 16th century painting, The Baptism of Christ, with a curious inclusion and many others.
There are stories throughout our human history of encounters with anomalous things or entities.
Mesopotamia, one of the first civilizations, have a very ET-like folklore attached to it.
And in many traditions and indigenous cultures, there's just too much evidence, I think, in the annals of history to say none of this exists.
Missing time and erased memories can be found in many stories of extraterrestrial encounters. And like with Terrell, Erin, and Helen, it can elevate the emotional stress of their experience.
I didn't have any memory at all that anything strange had happened. The memory was washed away.
The missing time enigma is probably one of the most perplexing and yet most common aspects of the abduction phenomenon. There's a chunk of time in which you didn't know what you were doing, and they don't know where that time went.
And not knowing where you went or what happened to you is terrifying.
Somehow these beings, they're operating outside of the framework of time that we know. I call it a time warping. Time warps when you're having experiences where there's an alteration of consciousness somehow. They have the ability, it seems, to shift our own consciousness in the process of all this in any way they want.
It's petrifying to know that they have the ability to do that.
It also raises an important question that anyone would ask their alien captor.
Why are you mind blocking? What is to be blocked that I'm not to see or remember?
And the answer may be more unsettling and sickening than ever imagined.
It didn't take me long to realize that they must have been harvesting a fetus.